Rob Hunt, and welcome back to another episode of Between Two Pints, or where I drink beer and interview people. My guest today is Mr. Brendan Prost, a local DIY filmmaker.
Hello.
Why don't you tell us about your new project coming out here, Mr. Brendan Prost?
My new film project is called Sensitive Parts. It's a narrative feature film. It's a dramatic comedy about a young woman who combats her interpersonal fears and anxieties with a little help from the imaginary manifestation of an iconic pop star.
So what was the genesis of the idea? Like, where did you get basically the theme for her having this imaginary friend who guides her along the way?
The movie is kind of inspired by the emotional experience of being afraid of the people who love you and you love because you give them so much power. Like, if you're a sensitive person like me and you kind of like rely on other people to constitute your own self-worth, like that gives them a lot of agency and a lot of power. And it's about the sensation of like when you are in a like even a relationship that's like solid and trusting with a friend or a romantic partner, you're constantly like afraid of them because they wield this like strength over you.
It's like that vulnerability of love then.
Yeah, it's absolutely like that. But I think the film is about a character who experiences like a very exaggerated sense of that. Like, so it's somebody who is especially sensitive to the slights of others and the perceives insults
perception
or like hurts or things like that.
Hence her then having this perceived, almost played again Sam type figure who helps guide her and basically is her ego for her.
Well, yeah, like it makes total sense for the character in the movie. Like Dayleigh, who's the main character, she has like this pop star who comes to life and comes to her and tells her that she's fantastic and filled with confidence and that she's beautiful and brilliant. It totally makes sense for a character who needs her friends and her partners to tell her that she is unique and wonderful to have an imaginary friend who kind of comes to her and tells her the same thing. I mean, it's essentially her. It's her inner voice, kind of like, it's that positive self-talk that she needs, but she manifests it in someone else because that's how reliant she is on other people to tell her that she's worthwhile.
Now tell us about your leading lady playing this Dayleigh.
Yes, the leading lady playing Dayleigh, her name is Caroline Young.
Frequent guest on my show here, actually.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I think I watched the episode.
Oh, there you go. We had a lot of fun on the Christmas special.
I know Caroline from a short film project I made called Getting There, and I knew immediately that I wanted to work with Caroline again, and she was especially like the right person for this movie, not just because she's a great actor, but because her emotions really sit, I think, like really right underneath the surface of her performance, like the internal workings, the emotional inner workings of her as a person, like are so visible when she's performing. And this is a character who has like a very thin skin. And so we needed to be able to see this person who is just constantly like on the verge of being like punctured and popped like a little balloon. And Caroline just like captures that energy so perfectly. And she just lends some fantastic characterizations to Dayleigh that are uniquely her and that couldn't have been, like the movie wouldn't have been the same without having her in it. So beautiful. Yeah, she's fantastic.
Now, I'd say, would you say the same holds for you, that as a writer and then director who, well, you essentially do everything as a DIY filmmaker? Don't get me wrong, you have wonderful collaborators. I don't want to take credit away from anyone, your cast or crew, but would you say the same's for you, that the emotions are right there under the surface and that going through your library of projects, going through filmography, people can get a good insight as to basically your struggles or what you're going through in your emotional arc as a person?
Yeah, I think like in watching the films, that's very much the goal. Like, for me, it's very hard to express myself and explain things to people, like as I'm having trouble right now.
As Rob Hunt, my only suggestion is that you drink more.
Great. So, sorry, what was your question again?
Would you say that as a filmmaker and a writer and director, that it's the same for you, that the emotions are there just under the surface and that you take us on really personal journeys on these stories?
I would even go so far as to say, like, in my films that the emotion like literally sits on the surface and there's very few layers like separating the audience from the emotional experiences that I had as a person that inspired the films. Like, I think they're kind of like very brazenly honest movies in that sense, because I do have a hard time like expressing myself like in life and in a conversation and things like that. And so film is an opportunity for me to like emotionally get that out. So yeah, it does like sit on the surface because it's the only like for me, it's the only safe space in which to make it visible and let it be known. Yeah.
That's beautiful. It's the way you communicate. So this movie, what were the biggest challenges on bringing this? Because this is your fourth feature film, correct?
This is my fourth narrative feature film.
On shoestring budgets.
Yeah. The biggest challenge in the movie. Well, like there's all the regular challenges of making a DIY film. You know, the limited time, the limited resources. Straining all your collaborators to the breaking point, not having enough time to.
What's art without suffering, though?
Yeah, but not having enough time to deliberate all your creative choices. Really, like when you're making a film with nothing, a lot of your decision making becomes very like instinctual and very pragmatic. And for me, I think what I would really value as a filmmaker and like a next step is having time to really deliberate my creative choices. So I think that's always the biggest challenge, is making your choices really meaningful and not just like pragmatic in the sense of like getting it done and getting it finished. And I mean, I really excel at that, obviously, because I've been able to get these projects done, but... And
you landed this whale of an interview.
Yeah.
With me, Rob
Hunt. This is huge. With the Rob Hunt. I can't even believe it. But I'd say this is the biggest challenge, like kind of just overall filmmaking at this level. But in terms of this particular project, I think the biggest challenge was... I think like creating, like this was my first film, making it like kind of separate, like while I was like working full time. And I think working in Vancouver, everybody's got their day job while they pursue their creative passions. Finding the emotional and intellectual like headspace to like separate yourself from the anxieties of your work and day-to-day life. I not only did I experience like great difficulty with this project, but I think all of my chief collaborators did, because basically like you get your 13 days off to make the movie, and the day beforehand you were working at your day job, you were at the desk doing whatever, so you can make enough money so you could take the time off to do it.
It's the Peter Parker syndrome, basically, where you can't separate yourself and you start leading these double lives because you've got to work full time and then you've got to jump on at night.
And I think there's a certain kind of, as much as people want to be there and they want to be successful like on set, and they've obviously given you this time, they want it to be worthwhile. Ultimately, everyone who's there is tired and stressed, and like this is the vacation. This is their vacation. Yeah. They're not going on a trip to Maui or Hawaii or whatever. They're there trying to make art and trying to make something meaningful, and it can be frustrating and hard and really difficult.
To have your obligations strain your passions.
Yeah, and I think that was the biggest challenge in this movie. It was like that, creating enough of a safe space and a stress-free space for all the artists involved to give it their best was really hard, and I found it especially hard for me. But you succeeded, and it's beautiful. Well, we'll see. Nobody's seen it yet. Well, we will see. So, anyway, thank you again, Brendan. I'm your host, Rob Hunt, and today we're drinking Storm Brewing's Purple Rain, a delicious little brew. Mm-hmm. One final question, what is next for Brendan Prost? Well, we have to come up with a distribution plan for the new movie, and I'm developing 2 short projects to shoot, hopefully in the spring or in the summer, but yeah, it's going to be hard. Exciting. Mm-hmm. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Rob. Thanks again for joining me on another episode of Between Two Pints with our wonderful guest today. Later, we'll be auctioning off my notepad, or as I call it, this steamy, completely accurate drawing of Mr. Dayleigh Nelson. So hit us up online if you're interested in getting this original copy made during the production of this episode. He owns those pants. I've seen them. He's like a genie samurai. An Italian genie samurai. That is the mustache, right? It is Richard Haney's mustache. Just could put the old John Hancock on there. It's your mustache. All right, Pat, that was great. Thanks, guys.